appreciate everybody joining in today for our panel. So we've got 5 lovely panelists with me here, but just to give you kind of a background and intro on what we're going to be talking about today, it's going to be about enhancing project delivery in the infrastructure world. So focusing on how can we increase our efficiency and what innovation is going on in the sector, and what effect does collaboration have on trying to actually get these projects done. So my name is Gabe Brown. I'm an account executive at Procore. We are a construction management software, so helping out with everything from pre-construction and design all the way through to closeout, tracking things like your RFIs, submittals, drawings, photos, punch lists, meeting minutes, that sort of thing, all the way over to quality checks and assurances and tracking your finances, like your budget, your cost codes, your funding sources, your change orders and potential change orders, and being able to report and track on all that kind of all in a single system there. So really for today, though, wanted to make use of the lovely panelists we do have. I can talk about Procore till I'm blue in the face, but that's not why I'm here. So I'll go ahead and pass the mic over and let each of our panelists introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Jared Thatcher. I am with the Port of Seattle. I've been with them just over 5 years now. Prior to that, I did work construction for almost 20 years. I started off with my dad's steel fabricating business, was driving forklifts, operating cranes before I had a learner's permit, which OSHA does allow you to do if your dad owns a business. Yeah, heck, I learned swear words. I didn't even know were swear words working with the iron workers there, but ended up getting my MBA. From there, I ended up working with Daimler Trucks North America, introduced to Lean, helped save the company just over $1.1 billion over the course of 3 years, and then ended up doing some management consulting work, eventually now at the Port of Seattle, where I help government become more efficient, which means I have a job for life. And most recently, I've been working with the procurement department, where just one of the things they've been working on, they were taking about 10 months to bring a consultant on board, and we've got that down to 3.5. So that's what I.
Morning. I'm Lisa Strader, she, her pronouns. I'm the Portland Bureau of Transportation's Americans with Disabilities Act coordinator. I've been working in the accessibility space for about 10 years now. Prior to that, I did design and construction project management, so I have a background in a lot of what we're talking about with project delivery, but my current job focuses on that engagement and collaboration with the end users, especially with community members with disabilities, being sure that they are part of the process from the start, from the planning phase before we ever decide exactly what we're going to build, that they're with us during the design and talking to us about how things work and don't work for them, that during construction, we're still working with them and being sure that when we've blocked sidewalks for the construction to take place, or when we've closed a road, because that's what we're building, we've got good wayfinding, accessible wayfinding to get people through and around. And then when we're done, that we circle back and be sure that we built something that we said we were going to build and that it does work for them. And if it doesn't, then learn from that so next time we do it better. So really happy to be here today. Thanks.
Hi, good morning. I'm Pam Wren from Sound Transit, and I'm the Deputy Project Director for Service Delivery, which is an indecipherable sort of title. But I actually run the PIP program, which coordinates Sound Transit and community resources around service disruption. So, for example, when we close the downtown transit tunnel, which we're about to do the second weekend in November, we coordinate to be sure that passengers are the least impacted possible while we get the most construction done possible. And we have alternate operations, in this case, a bus bridge. So we do multiple different types of disruptions, and this is a new program. I mean, don't get me wrong, we were doing service disruptions before this program started, but the program is an attempt to coordinate better, to serve passengers better, to operate better and get more construction done, and in particular to serve passengers who are the most vulnerable, including disabled passengers. So happy to be here and happy to talk about what we do at Sound Transit.
Before I introduce myself, I just wanted to know how many people are outside of Seattle, are coming out from outside of Seattle. Raise of hand. All right. So I'll say, since we're going to be talking of infrastructure, if you have a chance, visit the waterfront and go look at Outlook and see the water. If you have a chance, a few hours of your time, do that. And if you have a chance, take a moment, take the G line and drive along Madison. So I just wanted to highlight some of those investments that Seattle has done, so that when we talk of efficiency, you know what we are talking about. Anyhow, I'm Julius Ramashonje. I began my career as a laborer, if believe it or not. So I began my career way back. I worked for Czech corporations, built nursing homes. So I know how to use a shovel. I built my way up. I went to college. While I was going to college, I got an internship with the city of Seattle, and I worked as a student engineer at the materials lab. So when we're talking of asphalt, we did some of that first asphalt testing, and that was part of my job when we did asphalt testing and understanding porous asphalt. So I've built my way up through that career, became garnered an entry-level engineering position to now where I'm an executive. I also worked as a senior maintenance manager. So when we talk of equipment and we talk of labor, or we talk of productivity down the line, that's where my background comes from. I have a bachelor's degree in construction management, and I'm a certified construction manager by the American Association of Construction Managers. And I'm an executive with the Department of Transportation. So I provide leadership to design engineering, to structural design, to project management, to construction management, and the environmental team services reports to me also. And we, believe it or not, my division also buys and sells property. So I have a real property services that reports to me. So that gives you a background of where I'm coming from. So thank you.
Hello. Can you hear me all the way in the back? Location, location, location. My name is Kyle Elk. I work for Washington State Ferries, which is a division of Washington State Department of Transportation. I oversee all of the IT infrastructure and architecture for Washington State Ferries Technology Services. So I'm the guy that oversees all of the network, server, phones, digital signage, wayfinding, cloud deployments. Raise a show of hands, who in here knows who architects the IT solutions in their organization? Do you know them by name? Do you know the team that does it? Yeah, this is a very common problem. What I spend my days doing is meeting everyone from the Secretary of Transportation to the frontline people selling tickets at ferries, understand their business process, what they're trying to accomplish, and start there and build a service catalog and build an infrastructure that supports that business process. So I would invite all of you today, by the end of the day, to figure out who architects your IT solutions. Go and put them, CC them out on email, invite them to a meeting, get that relationship going, know these people and talk to these people on a regular basis.
Awesome. Well, appreciate the introduction, everybody. So really wanted to just kind of start it off high level in the spirit of, talking about project delivery and what sort of challenges are we facing and what can maybe technology do to help improve those things, of opening the floor to our panelists here and just asking, well, what kind of challenges are you facing in the first place? What are the things that you're seeing day in and day out of, hey, this is causing issues for us, and how are you seeing technology maybe fill some of those gaps? So I'll just kick it off with you here. So why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of insight here, Jared.
Thanks. Well, speaking to your point of getting to know IT, I think that's critically important. When I was at Alaska Airlines, I was working on a project doing some voice of the customer, and I had the operations group say, hey, I know this is out of scope, but if you could help us do something about IT, that'd be great. I said, well, what do you mean do something about IT? And they said, well, we've been asking for 10 years to have up-to-date information about who's on the flight. I said, hold on a second, time out. You don't have that? Well, what we have is a couple days old, 3, 4, 5 days, depends on, the day. It's like, well, that seems like a problem, and you've been asking for 10 years? And I said, yeah. I said, well, I'll keep it in mind, but not much I can do on this project. Well, the next day I had a meeting with finance, and anyone who knows finance knows they like numbers. And so I just happened to ask, do you guys happen to know like up-to-date information about like who's, how many seats are sold on a plane? They said, oh yeah, I created a dashboard, a couple of years ago. I'm like, can you share that with operations? They said, well, yeah, sure. So they ended up sharing that in about 45 minutes after our conversation. And operations came back the next day. And of course, these are the guys that cancel flights or delay them. And so they're the ones to blame. But they came back and said, Jared, this is going to save us a little over $1 million a month because we can now accurately figure out how much, we're going to, if we delay one flight that looks like, oh, it's a low ticket, low seat. But if all of them are passed through, it means we have to put them all up overnight. And the other flight that's full, they're all local, which means they can go home and we don't have to put them up overnight. So just little things like that, it's huge. So not just IT, but definitely get to know all of your customers, all your stakeholders, understand what their needs are, what they can do for you, and what you can do for them. Just understanding those basic little things can solve a ton of problems up front.
I can jump in, yeah. So on the flip side of that a little bit, you were talking about cost savings. And I think, in my program, we work with construction projects who are so used to thinking about cost and schedule impacts that it takes a lot of work to get them to think about non-cost and schedule impacts, such as impacts to passengers, operational impacts to passengers. And as you know, many of you, I'm sure you know, that Sound Transit's been building, right, extending lines for so long that we're kind of like a building agency now. We're just now starting to get to the point where what we've already built needs to be repaired extensively, right? So then that's a new experience for a lot of the folks who have worked in Sound Transit and for Sound Transit, where you have to operate while you're repairing something, or disrupt operations while you're repairing something instead of just building something new. So it's taken us a lot of work to create the partnerships between the construction projects, the project leadership, and the passenger experience folks and the operations folks, and really build that strong relationship that allows us to find the best solution for all parties, not just the best cost and schedule solution for the project. So that's kind of a different way of thinking.
So I'll kind of take you back to memory land. When I first began in working for the city of Seattle, inspectors had books that had a carbon copy. I don't know how many knows what a carbon copy is, but you did it in triplicate. So you had this paper and you did it by hand. That's how we did our diaries. So when you talk of Proco and what you do with Proco and document management, in terms of technology, I say this, that in terms of technology, document management has come a long ways in how we manage stuff. Technology is absolutely really very important, especially when we move down to talk to productivity. When you look at city agencies, we tend to lag behind in terms of adapting new software. And there are reasons for that, and I'll keep it that way. I won't go into the details for that, but we tend to lag behind. But there are times when you just want to know a piece of information, just like you talked about with the airlines, and it's difficult. I happen to have very smart people, so I'll give you an example of how we use technology. I can look at payments, contractor payments. They are linear in nature because you find maybe 1 month you paid $1 million, another month in progress payment, another time 3 million or 2. And you look at those points, but you can actually do something that gives you an idea of how they are actually producing, because the payments reflect bodies of work that have been complete. So you see something that is linear in nature and you use a polynomial function to go across those points, and it can give you how they are producing, and then it can help you as a manager budget for the following year, knowing how much you're going to spend based on just those calculations. So technology is very, very important in terms of how we do work, in terms of how we manage grants, in terms of how we manage costs. you name it, in terms of how we understand and report. So we have come a very long way in terms of how we actually look at projects and how we look at so many aspects of projects and how we report to members of the political panels. So if you're talking of city council or the state, how we produce those documents, technology has absolutely helped us go a long way.
Yeah, so technology is really important. I guess I'd like to point out that technology doesn't work the same way for everyone. There are people with disabilities for whom websites don't work as well. There's new federal guidance now that requires all of us in the who run websites, have websites, to bring those to a standard. Sort of back to the communication with, for instance, passengers that Pamela was talking about. The city of Portland and probably everywhere else has maps that allow people to see where something's happening. So maps that show them where detours are because of construction, or maps that show somebody where an accessible pedestrian signal is. So that's something that blind or low vision community member could press a button, and that's a good, a safer way for them to cross. Those maps aren't accessible to somebody using assistive technology. So somebody who's using a screen reader, somebody who uses a white cane and can't see to cross and needs that audible pedestrian signal, can't see the map that we provided on the website for them. And I think that's a really common technology lag, and I don't think it's just in government. I think mapping has just not been something that's been developed to the same level in integrating with those assistive technologies that some people use. So I would just suggest that that you don't rely on that alone. We're slowly getting messages on all of our maps that acknowledge that they're likely inaccessible to some people, and providing a live contact person, phone number, and email address so that we can respond to somebody who needs that map that can't use it the way it's been installed. So thanks.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you guys talk about IT and keeping that front of mind. I really appreciate that. Everyone in this room should have a mental model of the IT and technology service people in their organization as the people that are maintaining the field that you guys are playing the game on. And every business unit is playing their own game. HR is playing one game. Engineering's playing another game. That field better be set up for the game you want to play, right? So if you've got a soccer game Monday morning and Sunday night you call IT and you say, I need this, they're going to tell you, oh, well, we can't build a soccer field. We can build a baseball field, but we can only set it up for T-ball Monday morning. This reminds me of a story that happened. It's a little bit embarrassing, but this happened to me. This happened probably to everyone in this room at some point. It's happening right now. We have a business unit that had a piece of software and they wanted to go from a legacy model of it to a new SaaS solution. Great idea, right? This is the way. This is the modern way. They did all the work. They got the vendor. Oh, what we should also do is we should get all these tablets and deploy all these tablets. That'll be great if all the engineers have mobile engineering data. This is great. Deployed it all, set it all up. IT gets flooded with about 100 tickets that no one can take a tablet and connect it to the Wi-Fi in the engine room of a boat. There's no Wi-Fi in the engine room of any boat. No one told IT any of this. Everyone showed up Monday morning trying to play soccer. The game wasn't set up. No one told us there was a game. It is so important to get in touch with these people at the start of your projects, at the start of your, whatever you're going to do. Find these IT people, meet them, talk to them, know them, build that relationship, and that is going to help you forever.
Yeah, really, really great insight there. That's the practical application of, hey, this seems and sounds like a good idea, and we're all on board, and we want to make it work. But now, how do I implement it? How do I actually turn it into a practice that works and makes a difference and makes an impact for us? So, I think one thing you brought up there, Julius, really stuck out to me of, hey, using carbon copies of, creating 3 when you're writing on it, so you've got extra backups for it to be able to give somebody else to or something like that. We've obviously come a very long way since then. I'm sure, I won't make you raise your hand, but some people in here still use carbon copies for things. But as far as, hey, we've come a long way and there is new technology out there that can improve kind of how that communication can work and how that documentation can work. There's a lot of options out there. There's a lot of things that you can do to try to, create that new way to log a punch list. How do you go about evaluating what is the right solution, and how do we know it's going to be something that we can successfully implement, and what sort of impact that will end up having on the organization?
Well, I can say that in Sound Transit, I think, the issue is that we don't want a different solution in each group, right? So I think that finding the needs, like another panelist was speaking about, finding the needs and making sure they're the same, or aligning the organization around those needs before you procure something like that or try to build it, is important. And it's not simple, right? It's actually very complicated, especially when you're trying to do your everyday work, which is build things and run things. So I think the benefits are quite obvious to moving to a solution like that, or upgrading the solution that you have. But accomplishing that, I think, is the bigger challenge, and making sure you have the right stakeholders, and making sure you have all the stakeholders, and that you're defining the requirements correctly. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's two ways to go about an IT service catalog when we're providing technical solutions to any sort of other infrastructure or project. One of them is to maintain a catalog, and anytime someone has a need, to go find the best fit and force it on them. The other version of that that's way more modern and more efficient is to go listen to that customer, figure out what their business process is, and then engineer that solution. As you said, though, that can be very tricky, because we need, as we grow and scale as an enterprise, we need standards. Standards are important. We can't just have one-off solutions for everyone. But then again, everyone kind of needs a little bit of a one-off solution to a certain level. So finding that balance between enterprise services and efficient solutions per business unit is an ongoing challenge for us, and we're getting better at it every day for sure.
Right, and not neglecting the business process changes required to move to a new solution, which nobody likes to change, right? So it takes a lot of effort to design and implement those business process changes.
And change fatigue is a big problem, especially in the past 5 years in WashDOT. We've made so much technology change that we're burning people out. People are so tired of change, and they get so tired of change, and then they don't change, or they say they're going to change, and behind your back, they go do the old thing. So forcing change, mandatory change is always a challenge.
So you're absolutely right on. I think one of the things that I've seen is technology matching the processes that change also. So you tend to find that when you're looking for off-the-shelf, for instance, software, getting that software to match the processes that you have in place can be extremely challenging for IT. Forget the licensing issues, put those aside, but the ability to program. But there are some cool things I just wanted to mention, that when it depends on what problem you are trying to solve. IT has that ability to look at the back end of a software and give you some data that you're looking for. And I'll use a real very simple example. We do snow and ice in Seattle. When you have just that little snow on the ground, everybody panics. In Seattle, it's a big deal. If you have 1 inch of snow, that's a big, big deal. So if you're from New York and we're telling you 1 inch of snow in Seattle is a big deal, or from Buffalo, New York, please be kind to us. It's a big deal. Yes, it's a big deal. But this is what it means by being a big deal. You'll find that when I was a senior maintenance operations manager, I had to report to City Council on what we planned on doing and how we're going to approach it. And some of the questions that City Council will ask is, well, I live in this neighborhood, so which plow comes to this neighborhood? So when you talk of mapping and setting up maps and detour maps, when you were talking of that, really understanding how to get background data off of your trucks, map that data so that you can pick whichever part of Seattle, and I can tell you what truck number that will be plowing there. So that was a problem I gave to IT, and they gave me a little in the box. Never existed. It's something that never existed. Gave me an in the box tool that I could report to City Council. And so when I sat down and I was reporting on our plans, if you ask me a question like that, I just looked on the computer and told you what kind of plow will be there. And I could actually call the plow truck driver and talk to them and direct them in that direction if I wanted to. So there's benefit in connecting and also understanding what problem you are trying to solve when you are dealing with IT, not underestimating the fact that also processes are very important.
So just really quickly, I'm going to pull us back to those infrastructure projects that all this IT is supporting. And just note that not unlike going after the newest and better IT solution just for that, going after the newest and better infrastructure, we're always learning new things about what's a better sidewalk, bike lane, transit stop. That can be, though, really problematic for people who use those things differently than I do. So consistent infrastructure is really important for mobility device users, for white cane users. So, and I think people probably know that. I mean, that means somebody who's legally blind and uses a white cane to navigate. So consider that when you're looking at those newer, better things that somebody's doing. I'm not saying never do those, but and we do them sometimes too, but that can just be really problematic for somebody who's trying to navigate a system that's different than, in a way that's different than I navigate. Thanks.
Speaking of snow plows, one of the nice things about working for the Port of Seattle is we have our own fleet of snow plows that we, plow the thing. So I volunteered a couple of years back and learned how to drive a snow plow just in case. And the one day that we had a little bit of snow and I got called up, I had COVID earlier that morning and just couldn't go. So I was disappointed. Maybe one of these years you'll see me out there driving. I think one of the big things is I mentioned it before, understanding the needs of all of your stakeholders. And we have our own construction department at the port. It's called Port Construction Services. And I was going through and they were showing me their facility and what they do. And I happened to notice that as we were finishing up, everybody, sat down and they started filling out paperwork and on paper. And it was not a carbon copy, but it should have been, because they went ahead and made copies afterwards on the copy machine. And I asked them what they were doing, and they said they were filling out their dailies. And I said, why are you doing it on paper? And they said, because it's the way we've always done it. Change, right? So we went ahead and reached out. There's this software application called Viochi, and we quickly created a online form that they could fill out, which then got rid of the need of, fat finger errors and things like that as, people were entering in people's time. So it made everything run a lot smoother. We used that in another application for all of the ADR or airport dining and retail folks behind the security of the airport, where monthly they're required by a TSA and the FAA to put out a report saying that they still have in their possession all of the things that could potentially be used as a weapon. So, knives, scissors, those sort of things. And it used to be done just a couple of years ago. It was all done in paper, and they spent the end of every month tracking down about a third of the people that hadn't filled it out and having to track them down. When they went ahead and created the form and did it online, for the first time ever, not only did they get everybody, turning it in on time, they actually got it turned in early. So helping to make simple changes like that is huge. But we also have to be careful too. Has anyone flown internationally in the month of September from Seattle? Were you struck by the fact that the international stuff was all down if you were flying at the beginning of the month? So we had a cyber attack, and it brought down our entire port. In fact, if you go to our website, I think it's still down. And basically, most of the systems that we were using we're not able to use. So we've been having to do a lot of workarounds. And for a while, all of the boards that said, what gate your flight was on, and all of that information was down. It forced all the international airlines, luckily it was only international, it forced all the international airlines to go ahead and manually create the boarding passes by hand. All of the baggage claim, tickets that they put on your baggage, that was all done by hand, which, probably looked interesting as you were doing transfers and stuff like that. And there's no barcode to scan. But we have to be careful. Technology is awesome, but technology can bring down technology. So we have to have, backups and be aware of having those contingencies and risk mitigations, because unfortunately it does happen.
Yeah, I luckily missed the timing of that by a couple days, but did hear about it and the headaches it's causing. So technology can be helpful and be an improvement from your carbon copies, but as you said, it doesn't come without risk sometimes. That's kind of the nature of life. That when we're using something new and different, that it opens up a new and different way that it could impact us. So I think one of the other questions here, we got 5-10 minutes, wanted to just understand maybe from y'all's perspective here is there are a lot of solutions out there, and sometimes, hey, maybe IT can help us custom build something in-house. Maybe I need to go buy this software that does this one thing really specifically that this one department needs. Maybe I want to try to find something that works for all of our departments and encompasses the needs of what most people need, and then we'll kind of build something in conjunction with it. That kind of process can end up, being very timely as well as very costly, depending on how it happens. And so, I think construction people understand this really well, that what is cheapest is not always best, and what is best is not always cheapest. My mechanic likes to remind me that. So I guess curious from y'all's standpoint and perspective, how do you balance, maybe trying to build something in-house versus go with something out of the box? How do you balance trying to get, hey, this is the best solution, but is it going to be the most cost-effective solution? Is the most cost-effective solution the cheaper one, or is it actually maybe the more expensive one that it does the thing that it needs to do better? How do you kind of balance that to make the best use of tax dollar money?
I can speak to that a little bit. I think there's institutional inertia. There's the way we do things, and it's not always the best way. And every time I brought one of these new projects, I like to kind of stop and say, if we weren't doing this, if we started today, what would it look like? If we just ignore what we're doing, is this what we would do, or would we actually do something else? And that's an important mindset to be in. Be willing to stop doing what you're doing and do it a different way, because it's going to save you it may save you a lot of headache in the long run. We've got these, what comes to mind is we had this system where we had antenna sites on the mountains surrounding the Puget Sound that listen to the telemetry of the vessels. It's this incredibly complex system that uses radio frequency and Furuno radars and serial bridges, and this is how Vessel Watch works. If you have ferry riders in the audience here that use Vessel Watch. And so we stopped and we said, if we did this today, what would it look like? Is that what we would do? And the answer was no. The answer is there's SaaS companies that listen to all of the telemetry in the Puget Sound and just resell that, and you just pay for that service. You connect to them over a TLS connection over an API, and you've got your data. It deletes a ridiculous infrastructure, and this is what we're doing today. And it's because we stopped and we said, you know what, that's great, but if we started today, what would it look like?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question about, trying to build something yourself, right? Or extensively customize something, or to buy something off the shelf. And I used to be an IT project manager for King County Metro, also at Kansas City Southern Railway in Kansas City. So I do have experience with this. I think you need robust requirements gathering, and that's a phase that most organizations neglect. I mean, a lot of times you dream up a solution and then you attempt to try to make it fit because the solution seems exciting or seems like the best idea. Neglect to go back and make sure that there's a fit there. I also think it's a complex decision-making process, and it's hard to summarize for executive leadership. It's really hard to summarize that cost-benefit analysis of the software solutioning coherently and succinctly because to be honest, it's a little boring, right? And I think finally, I think a lot of organizations fail to account for the ongoing maintenance and changes that will always inevitably end up coming after you implement the solution. You're always going to forget a piece of the software. You're always going to, no matter how robust your requirements gathering, you're always going to forget something or need to update it after it's implemented. And that can be a costly, budget item over time that doesn't always get included in the forecast or the budget.
Yeah, so you touched something that I wanted to talk about. The keyword is budget. So one of the things that we do in SDOT is really build a business case, and we work with IT to assist us in building that business case. And the way it works really is IT works with our teams and really understands what it is that we want when it comes to the cost benefit modeling. IT assists us in doing some of that. Why I talked of budget is that you'll find where we think that this is the product that we need. You've kind of said price, that is a really high quality product that we probably think that is what we should shoot for, but the dollars say something different. So it's then getting the in-between that can be really very challenging, where we said, will this really take us to where we want? So we have had some of those decision makings at the executive level where money is the dictate, not because we couldn't get the best that is out there, but these are the dollars that you have. And based on those dollars that you have, you kind of said the best value for the community that pays for that, for the citizens of Seattle, for example, or for the residents of Seattle, then you find that you pick a product that is not the top of the line, but something that can do what you want, or very close to what you want. So we make those decisions, those become business decisions as opposed to the technical decision where, in fact, what the teams that built that modeling for you was suggesting that this is your best option. So we kind of look at the dollars and then say, well, I think for the dollars we have, this is the best value.
So in my life, before focusing everything I do on accessibility, I was the project manager for the state of Oregon's interoperability conversion. So after 9/11, when it was recognized by virtually every state that they could be in a similar situation where they have emergency responders whose radios don't talk to each other if you don't literally work in the same engine company. State of Oregon undertook that project. I was the IT manager for the emergency response systems. So everything in a 911 center. And it was technology that was, so that isn't my background. And somebody said it was boring. I still think it's really confusing. So maybe that's why I get bored. I just can't follow all those details. So I don't know whether we were so much looking for whether to use something off the shelf or building something new, because I think there was a limit to how much was available and how much you had to develop. But it was, and just an accessibility side note, as I'm thinking about it now, I don't know how anybody in a wheelchair could get into a server room. Hopefully they're working that out so that we have staff that can do that. Had to insert that. But I think that the budget that we had was enough to move between those two spaces of what was existing and finding the right companies to develop or to deliver that, and what we needed to pay for somebody to either come up with or customize what was existing. So
46 seconds. There's a lot. I think one of the things is understanding where the project is along the way. And actually before that, going ahead and understanding what the requirements are. I've seen a lot of projects where at the end they end up scrapping it and millions of dollars are wasted. I think of City of Portland with their water billing thing about a decade or so ago. I want to say like $10 million, and the entire system didn't work, and they weren't able to bill a single person. Not a good look. Same thing happened at Daimler. They spent millions, and it didn't work. So 5 seconds, 3, 2, 1. Just be careful, and project management, make sure that if, sometimes it's better to end a project than see it all the way through and spend even more.
So we'll appreciate all our panelists here coming and sharing their thoughts. So thanks to Ken and Infraday as well for hosting and pulling this together for everybody. But I'll be out in the lobby if anybody has any questions as well. But appreciate the time and looking forward to the rest of the conference.